All right, we are starting a new project. This is the last project of the semester that I will grade. And it's our second to last portfolio assignment, right? So this is Unit 14. And of those basic digital art techniques we talked about at the very beginning of the class, we've already learned compositing, we've learned vector design and vector graphics, we've learned digital coloring and digital line art. What we haven't yet learned is full digital painting, right? So digital painting is related to digital coloring. It's just a little bit more freeform. And instead of being colored behind a finished line art, a clean line art, it is just sketched on top and then built up in layers, just like acrylic paint, oil paint on a canvas. You can also treat it like watercolor. You are allowed to do one of two subjects for assignment 7. And they can be either a person from the shoulders up, right? A portrait. You can stylize it any way you want. Or you can do an animal. But for an animal, I want you to do head to toe. I don't want it to be cropped off. And we're not going to do a background for either of them, but you could always add your own background or add on to it later. So if you want to do a full body portrait of a person, stick to the shoulders up for this project, since we don't have a whole lot of time to do it. It's all about learning the techniques. There is our final question of the day as part of this module. And that question of the day is very key to the moment right now, right? Where we just saw presentations on digital artists working today. And what we didn't see are any presentations of just programs that will create work for you. But those programs are out there and being pushed heavily, right? So this question gets to that. What sort of difficulties does digital art commonly run into about its value and validity that traditional art media doesn't usually have to deal with, right? So if I try to sell an oil painting in a gallery, no one has to wonder if they're looking at AI art, right? And they don't have to wonder how many copies of that image are floating around. But when you post something that's your own digital art to social media or to your website, those questions are inevitable, right? Are they AI generated? Did a human make it? In what way? So this has to do with authenticity, authorship, mass production, all of those things that devalue artwork. So what do I mean by problems it runs into about its value and validity? Well, validity is how do we know it is what you say it is? And then value is how does that relate to its quality and how much it's worth, right? Either in money or just in respect, right? So we tend to devalue things that don't take a lot of effort, and we devalue things in the culture that aren't done by a single person, right? So it's considered less valuable if you get something you like from an AI large language model image generator, and yet it might be what the client wants. So that's a big tension in the digital art community right now. So some examples. Art has dealt with these issues before of new technologies making certain image making more convenient. A very notable art movement that comes from this is the pop art movement of the 1960s. And Andy Warhol being a very notable example of that pop art movement. One of his most famous series was of Marilyn Monroe's obituary photo. So the technology that Andy Warhol was commenting on with these fine art silk screens in the 1960s was the new technology of very fast one-color lithography printing on newsprint, which allows for the modern newspaper to exist. So the newspapers that are printed now, like the San Antonio Express News, are printed the same way they were in the 1950s, 1960s. And when Marilyn Monroe committed suicide and died and had her obituary posted in the New York Times the next morning, Andy Warhol took that photo of her from that obituary and turned it into this series of artwork, right? Where he just reproduced, just copied, right? Just like we have digital art theft today. The black and white photo that was half-toned in the newspaper at low quality, blew it up photographically, because this is before cameras in the 60s, or before digital art in the 60s, and turned it into a silk screen that then he filled with different colors, right? So these are just some of his Marilyn Monroe series. Now go back or go up forward past digital art several decades, and you have the U.S. Post Office announcing a competition for artists for Marilyn Monroe postage stamps. And a whole lot of the submissions took their cues from Andy Warhol and did digital copies of Marilyn Monroe's publicity photos, right? Which the U.S. Postal Service had licensed for use. And then filled it with their kind of colorful, pop arty colors, right? Nowadays, if I go to an AI generator, and one of my favorites is the one we used at the very beginning of the class. So remember, you can only use AI in the ways I demo for you. But this is just to play with it. I like this one called Dream AI by a company called Wombo. And I don't even think you need to sign in to start creating. I know some of you have played with this. But if I do Marilyn Monroe, because it's always changing based on the new language models. So I'll say pop art painting of Marilyn Monroe for postage stamp. This is a large language model AI. And if I pick kind of a stylistic way to kind of match a lot of those 2014 postage stamp submissions. Oh, I should have said pop art somewhere. Oh, I did. Good. It will generate something. Now, the way that's doing this is not compositing from found images online, right? But rather what it's doing is it is recreating pixel by pixel a new image, but it is predicting what that pixel color should be and what that pixel placement should be based on all of its training data of pictures of pop art and Marilyn Monroe and postage stamps that it has in its database. And I have little videos that show you how these large language model based image generators work. It's pretty incredible computer science. And this does the job, but notice how I had no control of the composition of the color choices, of lots of different things. But this is why I like Dream Wombo so much. What if I go to one of these examples, like this one, I do just a really low quality screen grab of it. If I want to assert more control over the image making, I can put in reference images. And then when I put in the reference image, and it's designed to work with a phone, so that's the aspect ratio, which is a little annoying, I can decide how much do I want it to stick to the reference. If I say strong, it will stick to it almost immediately. So even though it was a low quality image, it will basically recreate it at a higher pixel resolution. Like that, right? Still have some issues. But if I let it be a little bit more creative, it's going to make its own decisions based on my prompt and the style I've chosen, which is a flat style, and with the reference image. And I like how Marilyn Monroe there looks older than when she died. But I like the creativity it did with the earrings and so putting some patterns in there. In fact, that one I might even like enough to download. And I'm not even signed in. This is available to anyone at any time. It's just not high enough resolution for printing, right? So why am I showing you this now? Well, it's for you to understand tools that are out there for digital art and tools that are out there for unskilled in the digital art techniques, people that would hire digital artists that instead now can do this kind of thing to create their postage stamps for them. And are they as good as the submissions from professional artists? No, they really aren't. I don't think they ever will quite be there as good, but are they cheaper? Absolutely, right? And can you get them instantly? Absolutely. So it's another instance of our culture kind of choosing convenience over quality. And this always being a pressure, especially economically, in commerce. So I could spend a long time, and I've done different experiments integrating this into my work process in some ways, but never as a finished product. Never for a client, never for myself. because the control and the quality just aren't there yet, even if you just tinker with it forever. So of those experiments, the best I got was this so far. And there's some things I like about it, right? So what I'm going to encourage you to do to understand this question of the day and to help you with your digital painting is to not only have a subject matter for your digital painting and photo reference for it, but you can put that photo reference into the Dream Wombo, reference, and you can try different stylistic variations of that photo reference. You can turn it into a pop art painting. You can turn it into a Van Gogh painting. And I'm not saying that's your digital painting. It's not. But that can be your inspiration. And it can help encourage you to push your digital painting techniques a little bit further. All right. So I'm not doing a portrait of Marilyn Monroe, but I'll demonstrate with the one I am doing. So this is Unit 14. So that's that question of the day. This is all technology in the last 4 years, these image generators. And it started very basically with just compositing from found images online. But that had problems and biases. Like no matter who you do, it turns any image, any portrait into a white woman in 4 steps. And that's because all of their data is based on mostly white upper-class female portraits from the 1800s. So you can see my portrait in 4 steps turned me into a white woman. And then I did 4 other pieces of my art, just traditional art, one of Louis Armstrong, one of Maya Angelou. It turned them all into white women, right? And Mark Twain and William Blake. So what do I mean by turn them into? Well, if you take the result you get and then you feed that back into the generator, run it again, take that result, feed it back into the generator, it shows you the biases of these generators, which is all based on the training data. Then it moved on to the text-based, the large language models, which is what ChatGPT is and DALL-E works on. And we talked about this at the very beginning of the class, but this is the time to kind of explore it and see if you can actually understand it. And what's amazing about these is they look like they're composited from images online, but they're actually recreated pixel by pixel through what's called a stable diffusion, like random generation. And just like ChatGPT will predict the next text character based on your prompt and based on what the training data says is the highest probability next best text character, this will create the next best pixel over and over. So there's a video that explains it right here. And you can look at that for your own interest. But it is pretty helpful to understanding
on the 6th of April, OpenAI,
the potential of these programs, right? And they actually, even though the training data has exploded, is like 1,000 times bigger than it was when this video was made, the AI art has actually gotten less and less useful because it's gotten more and more generic, like always towards what's called ambient aesthetic garbage, towards this like central mean. So it's very easy to tell what AI art looks like, right? And it's funny when I have art history students and things try to use it for assignments, it's incredibly easy to tell. So I don't recommend trying to use it to get away with anything, but it is helpful as a creative tool, especially in the phase which is called ideation, where you can generate lots of variations that then you can creatively respond to. All right, so that's for you to explore with question of the day 4. And then of course, just answer the question with 100 words or more on topic. Please don't use ChatGPT to generate your response because I'm interested in your own opinions about how this affects digital art today and maybe your ambitions, your fears about digital art. So there's lots there to play with. And there's even an exhibit at the Museum of Modern Art in New York, probably my favorite art museum in the country. And it's just a huge lava lamp that's all AI generated. And it's based on the data of attendance at the museum. And it's been a big attraction there for the last 2 years. So this is breaking through. And this artist is a digital artist, but also a computer programmer. We wrote all the programming for this. So this is AI generated art, but it's limited to the data from the museum at the current moment. Like the temperature data